All right. Is my screen being shared? Let me see. There we go. All right. Can you see my presentation? Ken, let me know if it looks okay today. My presenter's view. Okay. Try that again. There we go. That should be good. Okay. If it's not good, you still see my presenter's view. That's crazy. All right. Hi, everyone. I am Paxton. I'm with Funcom. I'm currently the general manager. My talk today is going to be about your brand and navigating the video game development industry. Um, little overview of Funcom. We are located in Raleigh, North Carolina. I'll give you kind of an overview of the entire company. But Funcom has been around since 1993, believe it or not. 28-year-old video game development company. We are based in Norway, North Carolina, and Portugal. We have 3 studio locations. We will more soon. Spoiler alert. But we are a Tencent studio. We are fully owned by Tencent now. They were on our board of directors for a few years. They saw what we were doing with our recent games, especially with the new Dune game that we're making, and they bought us last year. So it's been wonderful working with Tencent. So we are a Tencent studio. So I talk to them on a regular basis. We have made a lot of really cool games over the years. We made games in the 90s like Speed Freaks, if you've ever played that. Casper for the PlayStation. If you walk into our lobby,
learn how to program on a computer by.
and your mic is still active. Okay. Our lobby in the Morrisville area, you walk in and we have a lot of very old games, a lot of new games, but you can kind of see what we've done over the years. But recently we've made games like Mutant Year Zero, Conan Exiles, Moons of Madness, Conan Unconquered. I think not last year, but the year before, we were at ECGC showcasing our Conan Unconquered game, which was a real-time strategy game that we worked on with Petroglyph. We do a lot of co-developing projects. We do a lot of internally developed projects. We publish. We do a lot of different things. We own IPs. Like we own the intellectual property for Conan and Red Sonja, Solomon Kane, Mutant Chronicles, Mutant Year Zero. So we own all those IPs. So Funcom as a company is actually pretty big. We have 225 employees. But I run the things in North Carolina, and I also do the HR and operations for all 3 studios. I help manage them, so I do all the hiring for the 3 studios. So that's a little bit about Funcom. Here's a little bit about me. I've been doing business management and leadership for about 16 years. 10 years I've been doing video game development. I've been doing HR consulting, recruiting. I've worked with about 20 plus studios. For the past 3.5 years, I've been at Funcom. Currently the general manager. I deal with human resources, administration, operations. But over the years, I've helped build the teams at Activision. I worked with Raven Software and Vicarious Visions and Sledgehammer building the Call of Duty and Destiny teams. I was a Take-Two Interactive consultant where I worked with Ghost Story, which is the old Irrational Games studio. I've worked with Firaxis. I helped build the XCOM 2 team. I've worked for Tripwire for years. I know the team over in Atlanta very well. I've helped them build their teams up for Killing Floor, Crystal Dynamics. I've worked with them. I've worked in the mobile industry. I've worked with Kickside Glue, Gameloft, a whole bunch of different studios. So about 10 years kind of working with these different studios. I've got a good idea of what happens at different studios and the culture and the hiring process. So I'm going to share some of those tidbits with everybody here. So I always start off my presentation with talking about your brand. I actually have a marketing and advertising background. I owned an ad agency for about 12 years in New York, but I did a lot of marketing and advertising for pharmaceutical companies and financial companies. And I realized how important brand is and your brand. So that kind of bleeds over to hiring and getting yourself hired. So finding out what your brand is is very important. Um, I'm going to explain that to you. So personal branding. Just know that whenever we're hiring somebody at any studio, Funcom particularly, we're trying to figure out who you are and what brings you to the table, what you can do for us. So we look at your resume, we look at specific experience, we look at the projects that you've worked on, we look at portfolios, we look at everything, and that's all part of your brand. And just realize that, you know, we take into consideration, social media accounts and the look and feel of things. And, did you get your degree? Did you not? I mean, these are all factors into identifying you as a brand and a person. So, um, this is an important thing that I like to talk about with everybody is using the terms team or we. I want everybody to avoid using them whenever you're in an interview, whenever you're writing up some documentation, trying to get yourself hired, or if you're a freelancer. You need to focus on what you've done, what you bring to the table. It's the worst thing when I'm in an interview is when somebody says, we as a team did this, or we worked on this, because that doesn't tell me what you were responsible for. That doesn't tell me what you can do. I always have to kind of hone that in and say, tell me specifically what you did. Uh, were you the animator? Were you the producer? Were you the artist? I don't want to know what your team did, because I'm going to be hiring you as a person. So also, I want people to use their personality and sell themselves. I know this is hard when you're dealing with introverts, different personality types. It's hard sometimes to sell your personality, sell yourself. It's maybe easier for an extroverted person, but trying to stay positive all the time goes a long way. A lot of times, people get pretty beat up and get discouraged with the industry because it's hard to get a job. It's a very competitive industry. I'll talk about that later on. It's a very small industry, so staying positive and putting your best foot forward is important. So that's all part of personal branding. Also, keep in mind that people typically hire for personality over skill set. I know this is true for Funcom. This is true for a lot of studios, is that normally when you get 20, 30 of candidates applying for a job, most of the candidates have similar skill sets. They have similar languages that they know. They have similar styles with their art. A lot of times it comes down to personality. It comes down to, do you fit with the team? Is there a cultural fit? Is there not? So that's really important to figure out if your personality works for the studio and they're trying to figure out if you work with them. So this is something that we used to say in my previous company, that desperation is a stinky cologne. That just means that we realize that when people are desperate, they're reaching out constantly. It gets a little scary for people on the HR side when desperation is involved. Like, just take a breather sometimes. Just realize that there's different companies out there. There's different companies of all shapes and sizes. There's a studio out there for you. It may be an indie studio. It may be a small studio. It may be Epic Games. It may be you want to be part of the EA Games conglomerate. I mean, it's there's something out there for everybody, and just realize that sometimes it takes a little bit of time to figure out what's best for you and what's best for these different companies. I'm going to talk about your resume. This is what normally gets sent to us when, from the HR side of things, it normally gets put into an applicant tracking system. But this is one of the first things that we look at. I tell people to F up your resume, and that doesn't mean to truly F it up. It means to put it in an F shape. Put all the most important information at the top, along the left, toward the middle. Make it look like the letter F in regards to the most pertinent information. This is eye tracking software. This is where most people look at documents. And if you're screening a document, and a recruiter normally spends 6 to 7 seconds on a resume, the most important information needs to be in these red areas. So F up your resume. Objectives. People ask me all the time, do I need to write an objective? I say yes. You may hear other people say no. I like an objective. It tells me the role that you're applying for and your passion, or what, very top level, what you want to do. Honing in on certain job types or skill sets is important in the objective. Writing down that you want to be a hard surface artist, or that you are a specific character animator, is is important, that you want to obtain a job as a character animator at Funcom, or that is top level, tells me that you're interested in Funcom, that you're interested in a very specific role. That's important to me. I know that you're applying for this job and you've put your name in the running for that job, but sometimes, sometimes 3D artists, you're applying for a 3D artist role, or sometimes you're a 3D artist, and I want to know that you can do hard surface. I want to know that you can do weapons. I want to know that you can do panels in my spaceship, like that kind of thing. So writing an objective, I believe, is important. Make sure that you read your objectives. I can't tell you how many times that people have written to me and said, I want to become, a concept artist at EA Games, and I'm like, oh, you didn't edit your resume for me, and kind of turns me off a little bit. So just make sure you reread your resume and you have a good objective. Having keyword bullet points is very important. Highlighting your talent and experience is super important. A lot of times when we screen resumes, we look for very, very specific keywords. If you're a programmer, we're looking for, Unreal, C++, C#, Python. Like, we're trying to figure out, do you know these languages? Have you been taught them? That's what we use at our company. If you're an artist, do you know Photoshop? Do you know Maya? Do you know Max? Are you into Blender? Or do you know Zebra, Substance? I mean, these are all software platforms that we use at our company, and again, we want to know if you know them. So put down these keyword bullet points, tell us what skills you have, languages, the engines that you know. Work experience. If you're listing your work experience, always put the most recent first. You could definitely include game testing, internships, project work. That's all part of your experience, things that you've done in the video game development industry. Your education, what institution you are getting your degree from, or have you gotten your degree from, the year that you graduated, your major. Again, recruiters spend 6 seconds reviewing an individual resume. They may spend longer if they like what they see, but a lot of times they'll spend 6 seconds to see if it's valid or not. They are looking for very specific things. I look for very specific things when I hire people. If I see those things, I then move on to portfolios and kind of read over more information about that person. So just realize that you got to wow people and you have 6 seconds. I know it's tough. Your resume, do's and don'ts. Experience. List experience, skills, or accomplishments that are relevant to the job that you're applying for. And please do not mention things that are not relevant to the position. I care more about the projects that you worked on and the indie games and the play test that you've been a part of, as opposed to the fact that when you were in high school you waited tables at Applebee's. It doesn't really do anything for me. I understand that you had a job. Most people have some form of a job. I know that you were gainfully employed at some point, but mentioning experience that's not relevant to the position just does nothing for a hiring manager. Your education. We want to know things like your degree, the classes, any certifications that you've gotten. You don't necessarily need to put a GPA. That's not important. The fact that you've graduated normally is good enough for us. I normally don't rank people based on GPA. I don't think many studios do. We just are looking for the fact that you've graduated, that you have the degree that we're looking for, that you have been taught the languages or the software that we're looking for. Personal information, name, phone, email address, common. If you don't feel comfortable putting your full address on your resume, just put a city and a state. Me as a hiring manager at a company would want to know whether relocation is needed. Know what time zone you're in. I talk to people all over the world all the time. I talk to people in Canada, in Europe, in Australia. I was on the phone with somebody from New Zealand yesterday. I talk to people all over. I need to know where they're located. So putting a city and state is important. You don't need to put a headshot on your resume. You don't need to put family details, your marital status, your religion. I know these are very common things in a European CV, but here in America, those things are definitely not needed. Do's and don'ts, part 2, vocabulary. Use simple and direct statements, and make sure you spell check your resume. I can't tell you how many times we've caught in spelling errors, and I am not the best speller. Like, I will 100% admit it. I rely on spell check heavily, and you should too. Don't use cliches or idioms like "I'm a team player," "I work hard," "I'm a great communicator," "good communicator." We just assume these type of things. We can figure this stuff out during the during an interview process, but it's not needed on a resume. We want to kind of know some of the harder skills that you have. This is important. Applicant tracking systems. An applicant tracking system is a software platform that pulls in profiles, resumes that a company uses to get you in process for a job. Every studio has an applicant tracking system for the most part. I know that, Greenhouse, most studios use Greenhouse or Taleo or Bullhorn. These are just three of them. I've had experience with a lot of them, but applicant tracking systems, they will have your profile in their system. They will move you from job to job. It helps move you along the interview process. It will attach your resume, your portfolio to it. It just keeps track of you as a candidate in a company system. So making sure that your content is optimized for that applicant tracking system is important. I can't tell you how many times a person has taken a resume and flattened it because they thought it looked beautiful in Photoshop, but that information, that content can't be pulled into the applicant tracking system, so we can't find phone numbers and content. So making sure that you leave it an unflattened PDF or you give us a Word document is very important. Keywords, the applicant tracking system also pulls keywords, and we're able to search on keywords in most applicant tracking systems. So if we are looking for, a gameplay programmer that knows Unreal, we could search in our applicant tracking system and it'll pull every resume that has those keywords. So just keep that in mind. Length, don't go over 2 pages. 2 pages is the most that any resume should be. Again, with those 6 to 7 seconds that a recruiter's taking looking at something, that's a good length. One does not simply hire based on resume alone. It's all about the other things that you give us in addition to your resume. It's your portfolio. That's another big part of it. Brian Wells is my senior concept artist. He came from High Res. He was there for a few years, and now he's been with us working on our new Dune survival game. But that's just an example of his art station that has been laid out very well with his portfolio. He's got a blog about us, way to contact him. He's got some followers. So just wanted to give a good example. And you should really do some research into what other people are doing in the industry and base your portfolio off of that. You should see what if you're a concept artist, what other concept artists are doing. People that are hired at Epic, Redstorm, Insomniac, High Res, Tripwire. What are they all doing? What do their pages look like? Kind of mimic that a bit. You want to put your best foot forward. Make sure that you have an up-to-date portfolio that looks and feels good. Using an industry page like ArtStation is great. Sometimes people use their own websites, like let's say you threw together a WordPress site. That's fine as long as it's up to date and looks modern and is current. Updating your social media pages to show your portfolio, your contact information. I spend a lot of time on LinkedIn whenever I'm looking at people, and to add to this presentation, please feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. I will connect with everybody. I love having connections. This is a very small industry, even though it feels huge. Everybody knows everybody. People move around a lot in the video game development industry. So the more people you know, the better. Helps you get your foot in the door. You can definitely connect with me. I have, I think, 15 or 16,000 connections on my LinkedIn. So you could always look through my connections if you want to get a contact somewhere. So please feel free to do that. I'm more than willing to help out. Your resume, making sure that you have your resume on your portfolio is important, or at least some way that somebody can contact you. There you go, contact information. If you're an animator, or if you've done some kind of like rigging, or like you're a tech artist or something, and you have these cool videos, if you're a VFX artist and you want to show your particles, having some kind of video links is really important. Having a YouTube page, something like that, having good examples up is very important. It's all part of your portfolio. This is another part of you as a brand, is your personality and making sure that you're a cultural fit. Defining yourself. This is important because every studio has a different culture to it. I will tell you that Epic Games is very different from Redstorm, which is very different from Funcom. It's hard to know what each studio is like. You can kind of gauge it a little bit based on, let's say, photos. Like you can go onto Glassdoor and onto their website and kind of see what the environment looks like, and you can kind of listen to the industry and figure out who these people are, and you need to figure out if you're a cultural fit for that studio. People are looking to see if you're a cultural fit just as much as you should find out if you're a cultural fit for that studio. I know it sounds weird, but we give something called the shit test at Funcom, where we will say shit during an interview or swear at some point. We're a video game company. We can do that as long as it doesn't offend. But what we're looking for is how people react to swearing, because at Funcom we make games that are M-rated. We swear in the office. We have, our Conan Exiles games has nudity in it. That is a big part of it. We need to make sure that you would be able to fit in that environment. And culturally, there's a good match. So doing things like that will help to make sure that you feel comfortable around that type of language and those type of people. So, but again, every studio has a different culture. I used to do HR consulting for a serious games company, or a educational company. I'll give one example: Filament Games. They're in Madison, Wisconsin. I worked with them, and they were looking for a very different candidate than Raven Software, which is making Call of Duty. So I had one city that I was working with two totally different companies that looked for very, very different types of candidates. So if you're making educational games, that would be more for high schoolers or middle schoolers, or even training games. Very different from somebody that would go work at Raven Software doing Call of Duty. So just find a studio that has a culture that matches you, and they're looking for the same. Show your personality whenever you are interviewing, whenever you talk to somebody. Always bring your skills to the forefront. Here's what I can do. Here's what I bring to the table. But we look for personality. Like I love talking to people about video games, about sci-fi, about movies. Like I'm a huge movie buff. I watch movies from the 80s, 90s now. I love Star Wars, Indiana Jones, you name it. I grew up watching Goonies and Labyrinth and all these things. So I love talking about that with people. So if you were to bring that up in a conversation, I would definitely talk about it with you. So bring your personality up front, and it'll help you. It'll define you. Again, I'm going to reiterate this because it's important. Avoid using we. Focus on you, what you bring to the table. Making sure that you fit with the company is important. I mentioned that about the shit test and about the company culture. You could always look up somebody on Glassdoor. You could always go to their website. You could always ask around. I'm going to give a real world example. This is while I was working with Firaxis. I think I was working with them between 2013 to 2016 or 17. We were building the team for XCOM 2. I was hiring. I have hired, probably 20 to 30 people at the studio. Everything from 3D artists to level designers to programmers. I mean, you name it. I was working with their design team, and I was trying to find several level designers that knew the Unreal Engine, that really can dive in, that understood what they were making with XCOM. And we were trying to find level designers. I placed several of them there, and I had a candidate that was working with a studio down in Florida. Made a dungeon game, had a lot of defending in it, but it was a smaller AAA or a AA studio, and this candidate wanted to be part of a AAA studio. He said, Paxton, I need to be part of Firaxis. I love the XCOM games. XCOM 1 was one of my favorite games. I am perfect for this. They weren't sure about this guy. They weren't sure he had what it took to do the job. This candidate took it upon himself to build several level examples and showed what he can do in the XCOM world. He didn't have to do this, but he did it. And I guess him and I took these examples and we showed it to the hiring team, and he ended up getting the job. He went above and beyond in this interview process, showed that he had what it took, even though they were questioning it. He didn't come from some huge studio that worked in Unreal and made some huge AAA game, but he proved to them that he could do it, proved to me, and he ended up getting the job. So he's still there to this day, loves it. So that goes to my point of don't meet expectations, but exceed them, and you should go above and beyond in a do-less world. Okay, so I have hired lots of lots of people over many different teams at many studios. This is not 100% across every studio, but it's pretty close. So I'm going to go through the typical hiring process at any studio, and this is pretty much true for Funcom. That getting your information in front of a hiring authority is step one, and being proactive. This is connecting with people like me, recruiters. Then getting your name in the applicant tracking system, getting your resume in there is step one. Step two is somebody like a recruiter or will review your resume and see if you're good for the position. This is where they're going to go through and see if you've got the right skills, if you have the right style that we're looking for. If that's the case, then a human resource person is going to give you a phone screen. This is typically a 20 to 30 minute phone call that will not really dive into like your hard skills. We're not going to talk about your programming knowledge and not talk about how you go about doing a piece of concept art. But this is more along the lines of figuring out, are you a good cultural fit? Are you who you say you are? Did you really get this degree? It's kind of verifying everything that's in a resume or on a portfolio. It's not going to be very technical, like I said, but this is a chance for you also to figure out what this company is all about. I normally during an HR phone screen we'll talk about the studio, we'll talk about the culture, I will talk about how we are a Scandinavian company and how we value a work-life balance and how we don't crunch at Funcom. We do 40-hour work weeks, and with that, we tend to have people that gravitate that need that work-life balance toward Funcom, as opposed to people that are comfortable working 70, 80 hours a week, but you'll make more money doing that at a studio. So, are you willing to sacrifice, 20% of your money for a work-life balance? Maybe. So those are the type of conversations I'll have with people during step 3, during that HR phone screen. Step 4 is typically an art test, programming test, a design test. A lot of people ask me, how do you test design? How do you test QA? How are you testing me on the art side? At the end of this, if you have any questions, I can go into that. But typically on an art side, we will give you some examples and ask that style and make a character or make a weapon that matches the weapons that we've shown you. Programming, we use something called test. It's a C++ programming test. It's a flocking simulation that asks you to optimize some code. Design-wise, we will ask you to kind of build an inventory system for this game given these parameters. We do a lot of customer service tests, QA tests. We do it all. Everybody takes a test. It typically takes we'll give people a week, but it takes a few days to finish a test. After that, it's a panel interview. We do it via Skype or Teams or Zoom. This is where you're going to spend an hour talking to people. This is going to be where the hiring authority. At Funcom, I will tell you, it's typically a lead and maybe somebody from the production team. At least 2 people are going to be meeting with you, and they're going to want to know how you do things, what goes through your mind when you're doing art. How you program, how you design, what do you love, what do you not love. It's going to be an hour of diving into you and what you bring to the table. After that, in a pre-COVID world, we did face-to-face interviews. Lately, we've been doing video interviews for final interviews that sometimes will turn into 2 or 3 hours of interviewing with multiple people. A lot of times we need to get buy-in from multiple people at a studio. If you're applying for an art position or a programming position, you may have to talk to designers or somebody from QA or somebody from another discipline, because ultimately everybody works together on a project, and we want you to be able to talk intellectually about what you bring to the table to multiple departments. So that typically happens even in a face-to-face interview. You're going to meet people from different departments, so just realize that you're not just going to if you're an artist, you're not just going to talk to an art lead or an art director and maybe an environment artist. You're going to be talking to a producer or you may be talking to one of our game designers. So just keep that in mind. After you have your on-site interview or your final panel interviews online, you're going to get an offer, and negotiations are okay. I I tell people like it's part of the process negotiating that offer. It may not be what you wanted, and it's okay to say that. If you do it 3 or 4 times, that is not okay. One time, sure. Like we may not have hit the mark with that first offer, and we understand that. And you may be looking for something else. You may be looking for, a sign-on bonus, or you needed relocation here or there, or you have 2 cats that need to go on the plane with you, and that needs to be part of the offer. Believe it or not, that was part of somebody's offer that I gave from somebody that I hired from Obsidian that wanted to come over, and we had to get seats on a plane for their cats. So, yeah, that was part of it. After negotiations, you start your job, and after you accept that offer, you start up. You either relocate. Right now at Funcom, everybody is working remotely. I'm actually working on our reopening plan right now. A lot of our team members have been getting the vaccine, so we hope to be back in the studio, over the next couple months. So. A lot of studios are having a hybrid model where people are getting to work from home and coming into the studio. Just keep that in mind. So I know somebody like I think I read High Res is doing full remote for their employees if they want that. So a lot of studios are adjusting their culture, their environment. So keep an eye on the news. It's going to be a different world post COVID. Some changes in HR technologies. Like I said, a lot of people do video interviews using Microsoft Teams, Zooms. That's newer. Doing online testing, Google Docs, where it's a shared document where we can see how people respond to things on the fly. Behavioral-based questions. This may not be a huge change in HR technology, but it is part of it. Like, just keep in mind that somebody may ask you, tell me a time when you, let's say, had to overcome this huge obstacle and what you did to overcome it. Most people in an interview process will ask you a behavioral-based question. You, as a candidate, should keep in mind, this. Keep a whole bunch of these in the back of your mind. Like, if they ask me about a struggle, this is what I'm going to say. And if they ask me about, a time that I overcame adversity, this is what I'm going to say. So you should have some of these things kind of pre-thought out in your brain, because most of the time people will ask you. And just keep in mind, you could do some research on behavioral-based questions on Google and see what's common. Figuring out if you're a cultural fit, giving you a personality test is common in some studios, like giving you a Myers-Briggs test, seeing what personality type you are, or Wonderlic test, a general assessment test. Those can be common. I will tell you at Funcom, we don't do that anymore. So we kind of figure out the cultural fit in just the interview process. All right, how to get your foot in the door at studios. Number 1, connecting with HR managers, recruiters, hiring authorities. Connecting with people like me, just knowing people. Again, it's a small industry. Getting to know people is really important. Taking part in internships, very, very important. I know it's hard right now with this COVID environment to be part of an intern. A lot of studios have shut them down. I shut them down for Funcom, just so you're aware, because we did not have the bandwidth for our seniors to handle interns at Funcom, because believe it or not, interns take a lot of bandwidth. They take a lot of mentoring, hand-holding. It's hard for interns to kind of get up and running. We will be reopening that once we get back into the studio. We've had some real awesome success with internships. I know studios like High Res, like I know Scarlett over at High Res very well, and they have a great relationship with SCAD, and they pull a lot of interns and juniors in from SCAD, and that's how they find some of their best employees. A lot of studios do that. Studios have partnerships with schools. I've been part of the Wake Tech, senior portfolio reviews. I've done that a couple times. It's a great way to kind of get your foot in the door, is meeting people like that. But anyway, going to sites like Gamasutra, Game Dev Map. These are all great resources to find what studios are hiring, what studios are growing, where there's open jobs. Being part of gaming conventions like GDC, PAX, ECGC. Reaching out to external recruiters. There are some awesome external recruiters out there. I actually have contracts, and I know several of them. I'll give you 2 of them that I work with on a regular basis, is Game On and DAM, DAM, Digital Art Management. They are 2 great recruiting companies that focus on the video game development industry. There's a lot of other ones out there like Hello Waldo and very specific ones, but you'll find some game development recruiters out there. Connecting with them is important because their job is to get people hired. So yeah, it's good for you to know them. Big open room, no enemies. It's a boss room. This is just showing you that there's some obvious things that I'm just going to point out with harsh realities of the video game development industry. Number one, it's extremely rare for studios to relocate any entry-level candidate. Very true. It's expensive to relocate people. If you're entry level, typically you could find an entry level person in the city that your studio is located in. Most larger cities have a few video game development companies. Here in the Raleigh area, we have a lot of studios. We have between Epic and Insomniac and Red Storm and Ubisoft and Funcom and Manji and Squanch and Puny Human. I mean, I could start naming so many different studios here in the Raleigh area. I would find entry level candidates here in the area that match our needs. So it's very rare unless you really wow somebody. Yeah. School projects and project experience do not count as real world experience. This is very true. I've talked to a lot of different companies about this. It is 100% valid experience. I am not downplaying your experience that you've done on your school projects, but do not pawn this off as being, that you have 4 years of industry experience because you did a 4-year degree at a school. It's not the same thing. And it is different if you've company and you've shipped a product and you have something on Steam. We understand that's like an indie team that you've been part of. That is what it is. But do not tell us that you have 4 years of industry experience because you've been working on school projects. We know the difference on the HR side of things, so please keep that in mind. Know that a mediocre artist and designer or programmer will never get a job in the industry. There are always going to be people that will be better, that will fight harder. It is your job to fight as hard as you can for yourself, to be the best artist you can be, the best designer, the best programmer, the best production team member. No one's going to fight for you. Fight for yourself. I know it's harsh, but that's the reality of it. Just keep fighting. Like, there are jobs out there for everybody. I'm just going to throw some stats up here. I'd like to end this talk in probably like 3 or 4 minutes and then open it up for about 10 minutes of questions, and I'll do like a speed round of questions. But I'm just going to throw some of these up, just how the industry is growing, how much money is involved in it. There are studios popping up everywhere. Companies are growing, especially with COVID. I mean, a lot of people stayed home and played video games, and this is a huge industry. It's absolutely bigger than the movie and film industry. So I'm just going to throw these up here so you can see some of the stats. All right, here are some resources. I mentioned Game Dev Map and GameSmith and their Dev Map. These are really, really cool resources for you. Go to these maps, find a city, find a location, figure out what studios are in each city. These are going to be good for you to base where you want to live and where there's a good hub of studios. I will tell you that studios come and studios go. I have been part of studios that are no longer here. I used to work with Cliff Blazinski and Bosky here in the Raleigh area. They're no longer here. I helped grow that team years ago. They're not here anymore. These people that worked at Bosky, they got jobs at other local studios. But just know that, as studios put all their eggs in one basket with one big title, they're pushing for it. It may not go well, and that's the reality of it. Having backups is a good thing. Having other studios in that area. Like I said, there's a lot of studios in the Raleigh area. There's some studios in Atlanta. There's some studios in the Baltimore area. There's studios all on the West Coast. But find a hub of video game development studios, and then you can click on the studios and see who's hiring at that time, and see who's growing their studio. Taking part in a game dev drink up is also a lot of fun. I take part in the one here in Raleigh. I've been there several times. You can do a meetup in the area. We give away free T-shirts and games and stuff. And getting to know people in the game development industry goes a long way. Again, connect with me on LinkedIn and connect with me. You can email me. I'll leave my contact information at the end of this, and please feel free to contact me. So that is pretty much the end of our talk. I have about 10 minutes left. I'm going to leave my contact information up here on the screen. And Ken, are you around at all? Cool. So I don't know if you want to do what we did yesterday. That seemed to go really well and went fast. I don't know if you're cool doing that again. Oh yeah, okay. Yeah, I don't know how many people were part of this talk. I kind of went to one monitor and just kept it up. And I know this is John Romero's time slot. And I wrote that. I was like, oh, I'm talking the same time as John. So it's okay. So but I figured yesterday there was a lot more people that were in that talk. So Uh, that's if you're open and honest about that, yeah, that's fine. I've talked to people that have said, I'm gonna go move to the West Coast and stay with my friend. I will take care of myself. You don't need to worry about relocation. That's fine as long as you are honest about that and you're okay with it. Um, yeah, if you're willing to relocate yourself, it's just expensive. I mean, it costs. If I move people from the West Coast to the East Coast, and I'm talking, $15,000 to bring people that have, maybe a kid or two. Like if you're more established, you have furniture and kids and you need flights and you need all this stuff. And relocation is part of our packages. We cover 100% of relocation for our intermediate, our seniors, our leads, and it just gets expensive. So normally it's a very high risk to hire an entry level person. So if you're willing to take on that relocation cost yourself, that kind of makes it easier on a hiring authority if you're honest with them about it. Um, but we know that it's tough for you to get a place and figure out where you're going to be, and it's a struggle. But yeah, that helps out a lot if you were to do that. I can't imagine that somebody's looking for an entry level person that can ship a AAA title. If you go on Funcom, maybe defining what an entry level title is. I'll do that. So, as an example, at Funcom, we're looking for a concept artist right now. A concept art title is an intermediate title. If you're a concept artist, that is somebody that has 3 to 4 years of industry experience. If it had the word junior in front of it, that is somebody that is right out of school. A junior concept artist has 0, 1, maybe 2 years of industry experience. So if you're looking at jobs and you say, oh, there's an animator position or a concept artist position or a 3D artist position, that is an intermediate position. After 5 years of experience in the industry, typically a senior title gets thrown onto that. At Funcom, we have a career progression plan where we have junior one, junior two, which is years one, year two, normal intermediate position, which is just like I said, a concept artist, whatever, years 3 and 4. And then after that, we have senior 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 that goes up to 30 years of experience. You can be a principal, you can go the management track and become a lead or a director level person. But just know that most people that are looking for juniors will not ask for a AAA title shipped, but just understand the meaning behind the title and that. But shipping a AAA title is not easy. It's you have to be part of a big company already. So if ever I was going to be hiring a junior person, I would never ask for a AAA title, a shipped AAA title as part of their experience and their background. But having a shipped title is important. That shows that you've been part of the production environment. Um, you can do that on your own, shipping something on Steam or being part of like an indie studio. Or smaller studio. There's lots of smaller studios that are willing to give people a chance, and they need extra level designers or extra concept artists. So j- jumping on board with some of those studios, helps build experience. So anyway, that was a long answer. Sorry. I, that's the same thing. It's not an entry level position won't ask for 3 years of experience. Like whenever I post on Funcom's job boards or whatever, if I'm looking for a junior concept artist, it will say 0 to 2 years of experience. So I am willing to take entry level people right out of school. Um, Taking part in internship is valid industry experience. If you're an intern, and we have paid internships, I shut them down, like I said, because of COVID. But um, in the pre-COVID world, I took a lot of our interns, which was a paid position, that they were getting industry experience, and I transferred them to full-time positions. It happened multiple times at Funcom. It's happened at other studios that I've worked with, where they've taken entry-level people or interns, and that's Hi-Res's model, is to take interns and people right out of SCAD and see who's the best of the best and give those best of the best people jobs. So I don't think that most studios are calling entry level positions 3 years of experience. That's horrible to do if that's the case, and I wouldn't do that at Funcom. And most, yeah, I can't imagine that that's the case. It's just people defining what a title is, I think, at that point. So look for the title junior in front of it, or associate. Junior or associate are the two titles that you want to look for whenever you're searching for entry level positions. Okay. Make sure you guys connect with me on LinkedIn, or my email's there. You could look up our jobs. We are making a new Dune game with Legendary Pictures, so we're finishing our pre-production now. We will be getting into production in the next couple months, which means we will be opening up lots of positions in all three studio locations: Raleigh, Norway, and Portugal. The Raleigh one, we will be hiring, animators, even entry level, 3D artists, especially hard surface, because we're going to be responsible for weapons and vehicles and combat for the game. So it's going to be pretty cool what's going on. And if you're an animator, I'd love to talk to you, because my animation director came from Infinity Ward. He's worked on Call of Duty. He is doing all the animations for the new Dune game with our team here in North Carolina. So we're responsible for that as we co-develop the game. So we'll be staffing up our animation team pretty heavily at Funcom over the next year. So keep that in mind. We will have junior positions. I will call them junior positions. They will not be, they will not say animator, this is entry level. We want 3 years of experience. I promise. I would never do that. So if there's no other questions, we can wrap it up. I'm fine with that. Well, thank you. I appreciate it. Okay. Thanks, Ken. Thanks, everybody. I appreciate it.